It's time to talk sports. It's Hacksaw's Headlines, a panorama of the world of sports, stories, comments, and opinions.
Touchdown, San Diego!
Now, here's iconic sports talk show host Lee Hacksaw Hamilton and co-host John Riley.
Who wants to talk sports on a Thursday? We do. From the DIXIELINE Lumber and Home Center studios in San Diego, we welcome you to Hacksaw's Headlines as we get ready to kick off a great sports weekend. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Lee Hacksaw Hamilton, along with my co-host, broadcasting from left field, the irreverent, irrepressible John Riley. We welcome you to our Thursday afternoon podcast. This podcast is brought to you by DIXIELINE Lumber and Home Centers, 9 locations in San Diego to serve you. You've got projects around the house or at work or on the back patio. Do what we did. Go to DIXIELINE Lumber for all your materials and for ideas. DIXIELINE Lumber. John Riley, good afternoon. Left hand says pennant race, baby. Right hand says NFL and college football. Boy, have we got a lot to talk about. Do you think we'll be done by Saturday morning?
Hopefully. I mean, you gave me the headlines. It's a long list. It's a panorama in the world of sports.
Yeah, we're going a lot of different directions. Couple of business items. Those of you who are part of our podcast, we do something really unique. When we're done with the podcast, it's called Fans Forum, and we invite you, the viewers on live stream, and all the other social media platforms to jump in and join us in the chat room on Fans Forum. John, just explain the concept of how it works and how everybody who's watching the podcast live can participate live right at the end.
Okay, so you got a question or comment in the world of sports for Lee Hacksaw Hamilton. Type it in the live chat on Facebook, X, or YouTube. We'll get you involved at the conclusion of Hacksaw's Headlines.
So get that in. Fans Forum, you pick any of the topics that we're going to talk about and give us a response. Now, when you write us a question, don't write a book. Write it so we can read it and we can respond. Just be right to the point. Second item, everybody's on social media. I want you to join my Twitter all-star team on X. I use the term X marks the spot. We're trying to push my all-star roster to beyond 10,000 followers. When we're done, just go to social media and type in @Hacksaw1090. Hit the follow button. You'll know everything I put up on Twitter, on X, and I do a lot of that. In addition, want you to share. Tell everybody what we do Mondays and Thursdays at 1 p.m. We do want you to subscribe, and by doing that, you'll get the alerts every time we put something up on the YouTube channel, and we do a lot of unique things in addition to these podcasts, so subscribe. John, we're going a lot of different directions. Let's get started. You wanted to talk about what's gone on all year long at Petco Park.
Yeah, the Padres, this series with Houston's been fantastic.
So the Padres are now day off, final 3 regular season home games. Will there be postseason games at Petco Park? We believe so. The Padres, final 10 days of the season, push to the pennant race is underway. Good question you posted, John. Let's just debate this. Dodgers have the best record in the National League West. The Padres are 3.5 back with a week to go. Who's the most dangerous team heading to postseason? Because they're both going to be in postseason. Right now, if you're asking me right now, I think the Friars are the most dangerous team of those two. You got Arise leading the world in hitting, refuses to come out of the lineup. Machado is at a phenomenal back third of the season. Tatis looks like vintage Tatis. Jake Cronenworth's had a rock-solid campaign. Bench Bunch has contributed when asked. And the starting rotation since the reemergence of the injured guys, Yu Darvish, Joe Musgrove, joining a suddenly hot Dylan Cease, and obviously a trustworthy Michael King. That looks like a damn good rotation. And they're 7 deep in the bullpen, although I still have grave concerns about overuse of the closers on the roster. I like virtually every aspect of Padre baseball right now. The Dodgers, they got Ohtani going after 50-50. But you know Ohtani's only hitting .236 in September.
Really?
There's so much pressure on Ohtani to go 50-50, home run, stolen bases. You got Mookie, you got Freddie Freeman, you got Will Smith, now you got Max Muncy. That collection's pretty solid, though they don't all hit simultaneously. The bottom of the batting order still is an issue. The bigger issue is who are you going to trust in the starting rotation once you get to postseason? because you got Jack Flaherty and you got Yash Yamamoto. And beyond that, you never know what you're getting from Buehler. And now the bad news, they just indicated Gavin Stone is not coming off the disabled list for postseason. The shoulder pain has returned again. At this point, there is no Kershaw. At this point, they don't know if Tony Gonsolin, who's had a couple of back-to-back rehab starts, is going to be able to make it before the end of the season. And then you got the guys in the bullpen who sometimes are good, sometimes are not good. I just don't think that the Dodgers are a complete baseball team right now. And by the way, exclamation point, I'm not homering for anybody. I'm just giving you the facts, because those who want to pile on social media say Hacksaw hates the Padres, he's always critical, or Hacksaw hates the Dodgers and the Dodger way is always critical. That's not true. I'm just giving you the facts as I perceive them. I think the Padres are the better team right now because they are healthy and they are hot, and the Dodgers at this point in those two areas are not. End of speech. The floor is yours, John Riley.
Social media fans love to pile on you. You know, they're like, Hacksaw, you hate the Dodgers. You're always hating on the Raiders. Well, you do hate the Raiders, but you're always hating on the Padres. You're so negative, and people are always trying to decipher you as a sports writer. Are you really a homer for some team? I think it's funny.
I can't figure it out myself, how the hell are you going to figure it out?
Yeah, it's just hilarious. So, you know, as a sports journalist, I mean, yeah, you're just reporting on the facts, and yeah, you got to admit the Padres starting pitching. You see the numbers, the ERA, the whip, the strikeout to walk ratio for Cease, for King, for Darvish and Musgrove. I mean, even for Martin Perez is like really good. So
Darvish is 3.46 since he came off the DA. Musgrove is 2.43. Michael King's been a rock solid 3.00 ERA guy. Cease is now, he's dabbling all the time with one hitters and no hitters. And to me, Perez is a stunner. I mean, his ERA is 2.72 since he got to San Diego. This was a guy that had a 6 ERA in Pittsburgh. And then you got 7 deep in the bullpen, more trustworthy most times than not. So what's there not to respect about the Padre pitching staff?
Well, it's just all nicely come together just at the right time. And, you know, there were times there where we were really worried. Darvish, we didn't even think he'd be back this year. And now everything is just really coming together. And, boy, Michael King. When you talk about that Soto trade, that Michael King, straight up for Soto, you could almost make an argument for that. He's been so good. He's one of the top 5 starters in the National League.
Yeah, and one of the pieces in that trade, Drew Thorpe, went to the White Sox, and that begat you Dylan Cease.
Yeah, that's worked out pretty well for the Padres. But you know, you're asking me who's more dangerous, Padres, Dodgers. I agree with you. It's Padres. But still, the Phillies are the most dangerous team in the National League, and they're the ones we have to watch out for. I just keep hoping there's a way for the Padres to squeak past the Dodgers, but the number of games are being reduced. I think the only way that happens is if the Padres sweep the Dodgers in LA and the next week.
Well, next week is obviously going to be huge because it's at Arizona for 3, then at Dodger Stadium for 3. And unfortunately, the Dodgers are opening a series against Colorado, and then they're playing Miami. So they get the break now, whereas the Padres had that break.
Hey, Colorado's a tough team, man.
No, Bud Black's a tough team who screws up everybody's pennant hopes.
Yeah, right.
Okay, so that's your assessment of the Padres. What's your assessment of where the Dodgers realistically are, hater?
That's a mash unit, man. I mean, you're just rolling out all these guys. Like we've talked about how the depth is extraordinary, but 80% of them are hurt. So you're always trying to find the 20% that are healthy with duct tape and baling wire like MacGyver. It's just insane how they're trying to juggle all those guys. And Kershaw, he's hurt again, isn't he?
Well, he's throwing, but he's not throwing off the mound yet because of the bone spur in the toe. How's he going to pitch in a game? I don't see how that's humanly possible.
Well, maybe he'll be able to avoid the military draft with that. But at any rate, the Dodgers pitching, I think if the Dodgers do win in the playoffs, it's not going to be like a 4-0 game like we saw Padres-Astros last night. It's going to be like 11-8, and Ohtani's going to have to get hot, and those hitters are going to have to mash more than the mash unit of the pitching staff.
Okay, so we're asking you on Fans Forum. You are participating. You are entitled to an opinion. But nobody, the thousands of people that are watching us on live stream, nobody's going to know your opinion if you don't jump into Fans Forum. You picking the Padres or you picking the Dodgers? You tell us. Get into the chat box now. So we go from that. Next topic on the table, what happened here at Petco Park this week when the Houston Astros came to town.
Yeah, Josh Hader rolled in from the bullpen in the 8th inning.
And obviously, boo birds were everywhere. They were just ready to unleash on Josh Hader, the aftermath of his year-plus stay with the Padres, when he's the one that refused to pitch 4-out games. He's the one that balked if they asked him to go back-to-back days. He's the one that recited his history of what happened to him in Milwaukee, and he's the one that said, hey, if you want to put the Padres' failure a year ago on me, so be it. But he did, I'll say this, he stood up and he talked to the media, and he just responded about what happened. He said, in essence, he said, this team last year was 9-23 in one-run games. I don't swing a bat. You're 9-23. They were 2-12 in extra innings. I don't have much to do with that very often. He says, you have to understand, because I understand the business of baseball. And he resents what happened to him in Milwaukee, because they overused him in Milwaukee. He had 49 saves in Milwaukee. He faded at the end of the season from overuse, and he went to arbitration, which was his right, and they buried his ass in arbitration, put out all these documents about how he failed 5 times in September. And his response was, that's because you overused me all season long in long bullpen outings. And they beat him in arbitration. And that was the end. That was the end of the relationship with Milwaukee. That's obviously how he wound up coming here. He was kind of offended, though. He said when the Padres traded for him, with all his saves on his career chart, they told him they would sit and they would talk extension. He said they never made an offer. Now, I think indirectly, his comment late last season were, are we in the playoffs? That's when they were hanging on for dear life trying to get into the playoffs, and he was balking about going back-to-back days or 3 times in a week or 4-out innings, and he made the comment, are we really in the playoffs? I think that turned Padre management off, which was why there was never, ever a contract extension, and they allowed him to walk, and they got a draft pick as compensation. So that's the background. So Hader comes out of the bullpen for Houston and in a big situation, and his first pitch is a wild pitch, run scores.
That was awesome.
Stadium. I'm glad you don't hold grudges. Stadium just went bonkers. But he obviously got him out of the inning, and then they wound up winning the game in extra innings. So your response to Hader, I give him credit for being a man on stand-up, answering the questions of the media around him in the clubhouse. I don't necessarily subscribe to this methodology of it's a business. I understand the business. You got to understand what happened to me when I did it their way, etc. So give me your response.
This is a mixed bag. It's not a pure good or evil. It's a mixture because the Brewers have a history of mistreating players from their front office, if I recall. And so he was clearly disserviced there, the way they, manipulated the stats against him in arbitration. But he hadn't gotten his big payday. And I think that was the deal. It's like Suarez got paid. He got, $50 million over 5 years. Hader hadn't gotten the big deal. And that's why he held out to try to protect his arm. But it's just a bad look. It's not a team player. And yeah, if I'm the front office, I'm going to say, well, screw this guy. I mean, he's going to be too expensive as a closer anyways. And if he's going to start dictating terms, the hell with that. We're just going to move on. We got Suarez.
So Hader with Houston, they'll be in the postseason. We'll just see whether he does anything in the postseason. But if you're a baseball fan, we just gave you the background on that story. Jump into the fans forum chat box to get an opinion about the responsibility of the closer in a pennant race, whether it's Suarez, whether it's Hader, whatever. Your comments are invited.
Hey, are you worried about Suarez at all, by the way?
A little bit. But he's had a couple better outings than he had. I mean, he blew a couple saves in a 3-appearance thing. He's given up home runs. But there are some outings where he looks like he's just throwing straight fastballs and they're not moving. And then he comes out of the bullpen the other night and he throws a ball. It's got real bite to it. All of a sudden he looks back to normal. I think they need to be judicious how often they go to him, how often they ask him to throw 4-out appearances, or whether they can really ask him to throw 100 every pitch and come back on back-to-back games. And the fact that they got Scott there, and Scott seems trustworthy for the most part, maybe you just need to back off a little bit on the reliance on Suarez.
Yeah, I kind of like that, where they could kind of mix it around. I mean, you could even use Jason Adams sometimes just to give the other guys a break.
Well, they've got 3 potential closers right there. Mm-hmm. Just don't overuse them.
Yeah, exactly.
Next topic, the other team in Southern California.
Mike Trout's in the news.
Yeah, this is the end of a really miserable season up in Anaheim. And Mike Trout reiterated this week, I do not want to change teams. I'm not going to waive the no-trade clause. I am loyal to the Halos. But then he put an addendum to that comment when talking about next season, because he's had back-to-back knee issues this year and 2 surgical procedures for meniscus. He says, I am willing to leave center field. I'm willing to be the full-time DH so I can stay in the lineup every day, because he's been hurt 4 years in a row with all types of different injuries playing in the outfield. They still owe him 6 years, $240 million. But he says, I don't want to be traded. I'm not going to waive the no-trade clause. I'm loyal here. Maybe we should talk about me being the everyday DH for 162 games and be in that batting order. Reaction?
He's too good of a center fielder to make him a DH, don't you think? I mean, he
keeps getting hurt.
Well, are most of the injuries as a result of playing defense?
Running into walls, knee buckling in the outfield, yeah.
Really? Well, maybe they have to do this to protect their investment. But I don't know, it's just weird how, I get how, say, Tony Gwynn was loyal to the Padres and Cal Ripken to the Orioles, but why be loyal to Artie Moreno? That doesn't make any sense. That whole franchise is a disaster. If I were Trout, I'd want to get the heck out of there.
I think he likes living on the West Coast, even though he's an East Coast guy. I think the injuries they beat you down emotionally. He's just tired of being in rehab and tired of being hurt. And he's beloved in Anaheim and Orange County. He might be the only Angel member of that organization that's beloved. So, I don't know. You're going to pay him anyhow. Make him your DH. They got him, and they got to deal with the Anthony Rendon thing because he's constantly hurt too. He doesn't play well. At least Trout, when he plays, is hitting in the 320s or the 280s and hits with power and has played really, really
well. They got
hard.
Moniak to play center, and he's pretty decent defensively, right?
Yeah, but that's a 205 hitter.
Yeah,
and they got
true.
Joe Odell on right field. That's a 210 hitter. Mm-hmm. I mean, they got roster problems, but Trout says he's not going to be one of their problems. Angel fans, somewhere in Orange County, somewhere in Southern California, if you're watching us, jump on board in Fans Forum. So that's all things Major League Baseball. Are you ready for some NFL football?
Are you ready for some football? Steelers, Chargers. This will be a big battle, both undefeated. Here's
the phrase that Jim Harbaugh used this week. Now, the Chargers are practicing in North Carolina. They won in Charlotte. They stayed in Charlotte this week to practice and are going right to Pittsburgh on Saturday. And the phrase was, now we will find out what we're made of. In essence, he's trying to set the mental state of Charger football to be prepared to go into Pittsburgh to play the Steelers, the fans, the terrible towels, and the U.S. Steel defense, which is really tough. Well, we'll find out what we're made of. Now, it's got some issues. Justin Herbert has not practiced. This ankle sprain, if that's what it is, or the foot injury. He was on the field today wearing shoulder pads, did not take part in any of the practice, didn't practice at all yesterday, had an X-ray on Monday after he got crushed at the end of the win over Carolina. Easton Stick is taking the bulk of the snaps. And the only burning question I have is why Easton Stick? Why not Taylor Heineke, who you got from Atlanta right at roster cutdown time? So, I mean, he's been in the program 3 weeks, enough to know some of the aspects of the playbook and the fact he's a trusted veteran. Why is it Heineke the guy that they might go to? I don't see how Herbert can play in Pittsburgh if A, he can't move because of the ankle, and B, hasn't practiced all week. So that's an issue there. But who has played? J.K. Dobbins. He leads the NFL in rushing, 9.9 yards per carry. Just absolutely amazing accomplishments first 2 weeks of the season against Raider defense and against a really terrible Carolina team. Quentin Johnston and Land McConkey, top 2 young wide receivers, have now combined to catch 15 passes in 2 weeks.
Hey.
Go to them. Make them key implements in this offense. The Chargers, Joey Bosa, back and hip issue. He only played 14 snaps on Sunday. So we're a week into the season, and he's dinged, and now he's becoming a part-time player. But he has limited practice this week, so he will be on the field sometime against the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I can't wait to see the matchup on Sunday. John Alt kind of made Max Crosby disappear in the first game of the season with the Raiders. John Alt, right tackle, T.J. Watt, pass rushing linebacker that side. Oh, that is going to be worth the price of admission to see that. And by the way, Greg Roman, the offensive coordinator, said this morning down in Charlotte as they were practicing, he was asked an assessment question of your offensive line, where are they? He says, well, J.K. Dobbins leads the world in rushing, 9.9 yards per carry. He says, I think our offensive line is medieval.
Medieval.
So you got the Chargers' medieval offensive line against the U.S. Steel Pittsburgh Steelers defense. Oh, Sunday. I don't care what the hell you're doing at 10 a.m. Sunday. You got to watch the Charger game with me. Pittsburgh, Justin Fields is going to be your quarterback. Justin Fields against that Charger blitz package. Justin Fields, who's really iffy. Russell Wilson, who re-dinged that calf, is not ready. You know, Pittsburgh, we talked about medieval. Pittsburgh plays Neanderthal offense. Just run Najee Harris all the time. Run the damn ball. They don't have a lot of big play receivers outside of George Pickens. They do throw to the tight end, Pat Freiermuth. That's a 6 or 7 yard completion. They just kind of grind it down the field. So it's kind of Neanderthal football in the modern day football, the NFL. But boy, they got defense. They got T.J. Watt on one side. They got Alex Highsmith, really good linebacker on the other. They got Cam Hayward, Warrior veteran and defensive end. Linebackers are really good. I mean, their front seven makes a lot of things happen. And if Justin Herbert has to play and he can't move, that's going to be a problem. And the other factor is, can you run against them? That's going to be a challenge because their front seven is really tough. The Bolts are averaging 197 yards per game. Pittsburgh is giving up only 260 yards per game defensively.
Wow.
So I think it's really going to be a good game. The Chargers have given up one offensive touchdown in 8 quarters, but that was against Gardner Minshew and against the incompetence of what the Carolina Panthers are. End of the day, do you like field goal kickers? Because this sucker's going to come down to Cam Dicker versus Chris Boswell.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be, hell, it could be a 12-9 football game. I think both teams going to have a tough time scoring against the other guy's defense. John, that's what I'm doing. Getting ready for 10 a.m. I'm all set. You tell me. Bolts, Steelers.
Well, I love the comment. Our offensive line is medieval. I mean, that's what you want Harbaugh to do. That's part of his recipe that he cooks up. You ever seen Pulp Fiction?
Yes.
Yeah, they had that medieval line in that movie, which was fantastic. It's a funny movie. Who's going to start a quarterback for the Steelers? Is it going to be Fields?
It's going to be Fields. Russell Wilson's still not practicing because he retweaked the calf.
Really?
You know, and you got Fields, who's a great athlete, but you've got Fields, who is highly erratic throwing deep in terms of accuracy. And you got Fields, who's got all kinds of footwork problems. And I spent the entire offseason trying to get him to work under center, which is different footwork, so he could read defenses. And he just drops balls, and then he backpedals, and his feet are not aligned to make the throws because he's not on the pocket presence of footwork. Then the ball is sailing. He's just all over the parking lot. But he can also break containment, and once you get him out of the pocket, for some reason, he's much more accurate out here in open space. It's going to be a weird concoction to see how they defend him. Can they freak him out?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I noticed. He was more accurate when he was moving and athletic. You talk about Joey Bosa, 14 snaps. I remember someone in the live stream said a number of months ago that Joey Bosa was the Anthony Rendon of the Chargers.
Probably close.
Because he's always hurt. But, J.K. Dobbins leading the league in the NFL. I mean, did you ever expect this? I thought he was more of a part-time, maybe third down back when they got him.
Part-time explosive back in Baltimore because Gus Edwards was the heavy-duty guy, but then they both got hurt. And the only question on J.K. Dobbins was, could he stay on the field? He's had 2 major injuries in 2 years in Baltimore. I bet Baltimore wishes they had him now. He had a major knee injury. Then he tore his Achilles last year. And he has come back. And A, he's physical. And B, he's got this extra gear. Once he gets to the second level, how are you going to catch him? Because he's big and powerful, and he's got the extra gear to go. So, I mean, he's had 3 monster runs. I mean, last weekend he had runs of 43 and 61 yards. So as long as they keep him on the field, that turns out to be a big-time acquisition.
Well, we always worried about all the skill guys around Herbert. And the receivers are showing progress, right? Yes. I mean, I think Quentin Johnson is made a big step up. And still McConkey, I think, had a great college career. I expect him to do well in the NFL.
Well, between them, 15 catches in 2 weeks. And they're not really been the primary target because the primary offense has been run the ball.
Mm-hmm. So it's going to be good. Yeah, and Three Rivers, here we go. Terrible towels.
So you like field goal kickers?
Yeah, I don't think it's going to come down to that. I think Herbert's going to hit guys downfield. If Justin Fields is starting for Pittsburgh, it could be a lopsided affair. Because didn't you call the Steelers as being at the bottom of the AFC Central?
I had them finishing last.
Or the AFC North, I should say. Yeah. So they're at 2-0. That's pretty surprising.
But if there's no Justin Herbert and it's Easton Stick against TJ Watt, then what?
Then you're going to have to shove that Easton Stick somewhere because it's not going to work.
Okay, you're a Charger fan. You're a Pittsburgh fan. Fans Forum chat box is open. Give us your impressions of this weekend's game. We go from that to other big games this weekend around the NFL. You ready, John?
NFL Week 3. Look at those teams.
Let's just kind of roll through this. We will start with the Philadelphia Eagles going to New Orleans. The Saints are 2-0, and that's a shocker to me because Dennis Allen was in big trouble as head coach, and Derek Carr has gotten them to 2-0 out of the gate. And you got an Eagle team coming off a really bad loss last week. You know, Philadelphia had no pass rush. Their secondary wasn't very good, and the Eagles got beat by Atlanta. Jalen Hurts has got to move the pocket. They got to score offensively. Their pass rush has just totally disappeared. I just don't understand any of that. And you got Derek Carr and you got Alvin Kamara. I think Philadelphia is going to make a statement. I think Philadelphia is going to come back and play much better this week going into New Orleans. Baltimore, Dallas. Can you believe the Ravens are 0-2? It's really hard, but you have to understand their philosophy. The offensive line's in flux. They have not replaced the two running backs who came to the Chargers, Edwards and Dobbins. I bet they wish they had Dobbins back now. And then you got Dallas. Dallas gave up 44 points at home last weekend to New Orleans. And Dallas has got all kinds of injury problems in the defensive front, and they didn't play very well in the secondary either. I think Lamar Jackson, Dak Prescott would be a fun matchup, but I think Baltimore probably bounces back. San Francisco Rams. A lot of people don't know this. You know, Sean McVay is 1-9 against the 49ers.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And it's going to be 1-10.
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, they have so many people hurt. And now they got a roster number problem in addition to guys hurt. You know, when you can put your injured players on IR, but you can only recall 8 players over the course of the entire season. And they got so many guys on IR right now, they decided, even though Cooper Kupp can't play because he's got a significant ankle injuries and a cast, they can't put him on IR because for them to recall all the offensive linemen on injured reserve, they're going to use up the 8 of their recalls. So the Rams are just a disaster. And now you got Nick Bosa lining up, and that's Matthew Stafford. That's a bunch of backups in the offensive line. Wow, the Rams are in huge trouble. And, of course, San Francisco is kind of peeved about losing last week. You know, Brock Purdy throws for 300, and Deebo Samuel had a 100-yard catch game, although he's out now with a calf injury. There is no Christian McCaffrey, so that the Niners are a little bit dinged up too. Detroit, Arizona. Lions got beat at home. They're not happy. Now they got to go to Phoenix. All of a sudden, Arizona feels really good about themselves. Cardinals have Kyler Murray. James Conner coming off a big 100-yard game. Marvin Harrison caught 4 for 130 last week. I tell you what, Detroit, they could get ambushed in that game in Arizona. And then you got Kansas City going to Atlanta. Kirk Cousins, played a couple games on the road, and the Falcons played much better in week 2. And you got Mahomes, and you got Kelsey. They are down 3 running backs. They have now lost Marquise Brown for the season, who underwent emergency shoulder surgery. Suddenly, Kansas City's missing a bunch of pieces that wrap around Patrick Mahomes in offense. So this is going to be fascinating to see. And Kansas City benched their left tackle. He's a young guy that they had hoped was going to be a star immediately. He leads the league in penalties after 2 weeks, and they sat him in the middle of last week's game and went to a journeyman, and that didn't help either. So suddenly, Mahomes has got some issues. So can Atlanta beat Kansas City? Maybe. Can Arizona ambush Detroit? Maybe. Rams going to be a tough weekend in Frisco. Lamar and the boys in Baltimore, I think, will win in Dallas. Can you imagine the Cowboys losing another game at home? And then you got the Eagles in New Orleans. I think Philadelphia bounces back. So those are the hot games on the board. John, throw some darts there. Tell me the games you like.
Well, I want to go back to the Rams. You said you can only go down 8 times to get guys off your practice squad and promote them.
No, injured reserve.
Oh,
it's 8 recalls off IR.
Oh, off IR.
They've got 5 guys already, 5 starters already on, maybe even more than that. And they're going to try to recall most of them. So that's why they decided they can't put Cup on there, because somebody's going to wind up getting frozen on injured reserve. You can't bring them back.
Well, you would think that if any sport would have more flexibility in rosters, it'd be football because of all the injuries. Why is there a limit? It's
interesting because I thought about that coming over. Years ago, up until maybe 5 years ago, if you IR'd somebody, they were gone for the whole year. You couldn't bring them back. And then competition committee and the general managers and coaches said, the injury factor in the NFL, as you're alluding to, John, correctly, injury factor is really significant. Let's allow 3 recalls a year. But, you got the Rams, got their whole bloody offensive line.
Yeah.
3 DBs, they're all on IR already. So 3 recalls, that doesn't help you. So then the theory was, okay, we'll bump it up. Then they finally bumped it up last year to 8. The problem is that people in the past were stashing young guys on IR and letting them sit there all year to, quote, develop them. But they weren't really hurt. And a lot of people started, the Washington Redskins, Bobby Beathard is the one that actually pioneered that back in the day. And they were stashing guys. And that's so 8 recalls, that's a significant 8 recalls in 17 weeks. But when you get crushed by injuries the way the Rams have, then you got to be judicious as, okay, if a guy's out for 3 to 4 weeks, maybe I just keep him on the active roster and he can't play for 4 Sundays. But when he gets healthy, I get him back. Because Rams, as I say, I think the Rams have got 5 offensive linemen and 3 DBs already on IR, and they're going to try to recall most of them. Now, that might be mid-season. It might be a couple weeks from now. It might be in November, but you only get 8 recalls.
That's difficult to manage.
Sure.
That's really hard. I mean, just to go through some of these other games, the Eagles lost last week, and boy, Kirk Cousins looked great at the end, but Saquon Barkley missed that pass, that could have put the Eagles in a position to win. So I was surprised. That was a huge upset.
Yep.
I'd love to see the Saints come over and knock the Eagles off. The Cowboys starting off 0-2 to me is just hilarious. Niners are going to roll. I expect that. Detroit, I can't imagine. They got ambushed last week. I think they're going to win this week in Arizona. And it's hard to bet against the Chiefs, but the Falcons are playing really good right now.
And Kansas City's got a lot of guys dinged. They're down 3 running backs. They're bringing guys off the street this week.
Yeah, Pacheco's hurt, right?
Yeah, he had surgery. He's gone 6 to 8 weeks. Fractured ankle. Got hurt right at the end of the game.
Unbelievable.
So that's where
Andy Reid's cooking up some of them.
Yeah, that's where you are around the National Football League. Fans Forum chat box is open. You want to talk about one of the marquee games on the schedule. We get to halftime, our Thursday podcast. It's brought to you by DIXIELINE Lumber and Home Centers. Hey, I bought windows and I bought doors at DIXIELINE. John has refurbished his entire castle by doing things with DIXIELINE. And John, just tell people about if they got projects in the kitchen or the family room or the bathroom or out on the deck, what DIXIELINE can provide them.
Yeah, so, DIXIELINE is a hardware store, like a traditional hardware store. They're also a lumber yard, and they have building materials, and they specialize in 5 areas: kitchen redesign, bathroom redesign, doors, windows, and outdoor living, which includes decking and a lot of other outdoor products. So if you're a homeowner, if you're a contractor, DIXIELINE is your go-to partner.
So did you give your wife your credit card? And because she made a comment about the kitchen, and next thing you know, she took the credit card and you had a brand new kitchen at DIXIELINE.
Yeah, I think it might turn into that here pretty soon.
You got projects. These are the people to do business with. DIXIELINE Lumber. Back here before we start the second half, couple of business items. X marks the spot. All you people are on social media. I urge you to join my X team, Hacksaw's Twitter All-Stars. Just punch up my handle at Hacksaw1090. Hit the follow button. Want you to follow me because I do put a lot of stuff up on Twitter X on a day-in, day-out basis. Next item, you like sports? I write. You won't believe the volume of information that I put on my website. Stop laughing. It's a lot of hard work.
It's a lot of stuff.
It's a lot of damn stuff. If you like sports, I write on a website every day. There's the address, leehacksawhamilton.com. If you give me 5 minutes every morning, you'll be the second smartest guy on the West Coast aside from me. After you read the website, it's there and it's absolutely free. The best 15 minutes in sports, my one man's opinion column, and my Hacksaw mini polls. That's on the website, leehacksawhamilton.com. Also, want you to join Hacksaw's Insiders Group. There's a big orange box right on the home page of the website. Just fill that out. You'll get on our email list. You'll get a whole bunch of stuff that we write and we email to our people. And we want you to subscribe. If you subscribe, you will get all the alerts every time we put something up on the YouTube channel. And if it's not me doing it, it's him doing it all hours of the day. Stop laughing. Even at 2:30 in the morning, dude, put stuff up on the YouTube channel. You'll get the alerts in the middle of the night, too. But do that. Therefore, you'll know everything that's going on. Want you to give us a thumbs up. We could really use a thumbs up. Give us a 5-star rating because that really helps us with our podcast. John, let's go to the second half because we just talked baseball and we talked NFL football, and now it's Nelly, college football.
College football. Here we go. USC, UCLA, must-see TV.
Yeah, let's just talk about some kind of marquee games. Southern Cal comes off a bye week. Miller Moss has really established himself in his final year at USC. Can you believe this kid never played up until now? You know, he started with the 6-touchdown game in the Holiday Bowl, and he's been nonstop ever since that point in time. USC goes to play Michigan. USC has kind of hit the jackpot with a running back transfer, wide receivers. Defense has just been superb, and they're playing a Michigan Wolverines team in Ann Arbor that's made a quarterback change. They got a lot of problems at Michigan. Harbaugh did not leave the cupboard fully stocked. Their starting quarterback had 2 touchdowns, 6 picks first 2 weeks. He will sit. They're going with somebody who's never played a game is going to play against Southern Cal. UCLA, we've talked about the deficiency roster-wise. We've talked about how poorly they have played. UCLA goes to Death Valley. They go to Baton Rouge. They go to play LSU. This could be a disaster in Death Valley. And I'll tell you, if people are unhappy right now with where they are with the hiring of Deshaun Foster as head coach, if they get lit up, I'll guarantee you Brian Kelly will light them up because LSU's trying to get back into the top 10 for a postseason playoff berth. This could really be bad for UCLA. Third game, it's going to really be interesting to see. Utah, Oklahoma State. Cam Rising get back on the field. He's their 6th-year quarterback. He's had just nothing but injury problems when he's played. He's really delivered the goods. Will Cam Rising play? And Oklahoma State, they are loaded. Ollie Gordon, one of the best running backs in the country, is yet to break loose this season. He's going to have a big game to put himself back in the Heisman conversation. He's going to try to do it against what usually is a very good Utah defense. Then you got Colorado. Another week, another press conference, another scalding from Deion Sanders towards the media. He just won't let this stuff go. Colorado, by the way, plays Baylor this week. Baylor's not quite what Baylor has been in recent years. So it may well be that Shedeur Sanders can come up with big numbers and get them a win. But Deion Sanders goes after the columnist again at his weekly press conference, saying, you guys never used to critique and criticize athletes, and now you're doing it all the time in this program. Now the columnists have been chirping about Deion leaving the starters into late in the fourth quarter and running up scores and throwing touchdown passes against outman teams. And they're upset that Shedeur Sanders refused to shake the hand of the Colorado State quarterback, Brandon Nicolosi, after the Buffs beat the Rams in the big in-state rivalry. And, of course, all the problems with the other son who's out with a fractured forearm, but all the junk off the field. And the way Deion's conducted his business. So Deion, he's lecturing the columnist again about what you're writing about my guys. And then he finishes it off and said, at the end of the day, I know what it is. You guys are just jealous because my players are making more money than you're making. He is so off the charts, it's unbelievable. It just goes on, and it just never, ever ends. And again, as John and I have talked about in the past, media's got a responsibility to be fair. Media's got the right to be critiquing if they wish. But the media's got the last bullet in the gun. And he just continues to do this every Tuesday. He's denouncing somebody in the media that covers the team on a regular basis. So we got that set of topics on the table. You want to talk about the games? Go ahead, John.
Well, I want to talk about Coach Prime, because imagine if you're the athletic director at Colorado. I mean, are you liking the bottom line here? Because the stadium is full. They're selling tickets. There's a buzz around town.
All-time record season tickets, all-time record corporate sponsorships in Boulder.
Right. So if you're the administration at University of Colorado, you have to be thrilled. But you kind of knew this going in when you got Deion, that you were going to get a lot of this chaos and hysteria around him. I'm rooting for him. Who'd you say they're playing? Oh, who they play? Baylor. Okay, that's a tough assignment.
On the road.
Yeah, so it's Big 12 time. Here we go.
But Shadur and Travis Hunter are just spectacular players.
Yeah, they were talking a little bit about how Travis Hunter might be like Deion Sanders was, being a two-way guy there on the edge.
I think that's what he's going to be by the time he gets to the NFL. I mean, that is a special talent.
Has there ever been a two-way player in the NFL that was legit full-time two-way?
Not modern day recently. Deion might have been the last one that really tried it, and Deion obviously turned into a two-sport guy because he played baseball.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think some of the two-way guys you'll see is like when the fridge turns into a fullback or something.
Yeah, but that's not on an every down basis.
Right, exactly. So you look at these other games. I mean, SC, real test in Michigan, playing the big boys, UCLA too. I mean, this is really what we've always been worried about with these two teams going to the new conference. Well, granted, the LSU UCLA isn't a Big 12 matchup, but they're going to get whooped. And it used to be that USC UCLA used to always be both ranked. Remember back in the days, and now UCLA just seems like a shell of itself.
Oh, if it's a disaster in Death Valley, just the critique and the criticism being directed at that leadership group on the campus in Westwood is going to grow and grow. I just think this has the potential just to be a disaster of a season.
Yeah, I'm really worried about Foster there. So these are great matchups here. It's college football. Here we go.
Okay, we go from there. The other college football story just is never ending.
This is the shell game, rearranging the teams.
Realignment. Pac-12's got an issue all of a sudden. The Pac-12 has now gone public and said, we're going to add more teams almost immediately. And the Pac-12 is under a lot of pressure to take Air Force Academy just because of its credibility and its global interest, because there's so many commissioned Air Force people that came out of Colorado Springs. So some pressure points there. There's pressure points that you should take Nevada, Las Vegas. And there's a big issue there because the state legislature funds both Nevada, Reno and Nevada, Las Vegas, and they think those two schools have to be linked. Nobody wants Nevada, Reno. That's more 1AA than it's Division I.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what Vegas brings to the table. I mean, fans don't go see their college football games, even though they're 3-0 this year. And basketball, it's a long time ago, Jerry Tarkanian. So I don't know what Vegas brings. And, is it a big TV market? I don't think it's a great TV market because everybody's going to Vegas is going in to play the casinos and go to dinner and go to theater plays. They're not going to see Rebel sports. So there's a push there. Please explain to me, because I think this is going to happen. This makes no sense to me. Why the hell are they pursuing Memphis and Tulane, the Pac-12? I mean, that's where we are with that situation. Now, you got the AAC. That's the American Athletic Conference. AAC has already met with Air Force Academy, and they're trying to get them to come join the AAC. That's the one that has SMU, University of Houston, all that. But the hook is Army and Navy are already in that conference. So they want Air Force to come and make it a 3-military conference, which would, I guess, be kind of a cool emotional hook for the Air Force Academy. So the Pac-12's got a problem if Air Force winds up going to the AAC. There's been an awful lot of conversation about the Atlantic Coast Conference and the lawsuits, Florida State and Clemson. Well, things change because you're facing a court order. ACC this week has met with Florida State and Clemson and talking about a restructuring of the media share money that's paid. Florida State, Clemson are part of a conference that signed a 20-year TV deal. When they first signed it, it was a state-of-the-art financial media rights deal for everybody in the conference, from Virginia to Wake Forest and all those people. Well, now they've been left behind because everybody else has poured more money, and all these other conferences have the mega deals. Florida State, Clemson say what you forced us to go into, coerced us to sign a 20-year deal, is killing us financially. They're threatening, they're trying to get out of that media rights deal. The ACC met this week, and they have now proposed changes in the payoff, offering bonus payments to Florida State, Clemson, or any other school that gets nationally ranked, gets into the playoffs, gets big TV ratings, or does well in bowl games. They would give them bonus money on top of the regular rights fee they're getting. And suddenly, Florida State and Clemson say, okay, we'll talk about that. ACC schools get $44 million per school right now in their media deal, but that's locked in for 20 years. Across the street, Southeastern Conference schools get $60 million. So now they're proposing we can maybe work out bonus things. If you guys do really well, you get in the top 5 in the rankings, you get a bonus. You get in the playoffs, you're obviously going to get a big payday. You'll get a bonus on top of that. If you're nationally ranked, if you get TV ratings that are in upper echelon, we'll give you bonus money. So suddenly, Florida State and Clemson said, okay, we'll review that. And the last one is the Mountain West. You know, if they lose Air Force after having lost the top 4 flagship schools, what happens to the Mountain West? There's a move afoot. The Mountain West should look at Montana State to come in as a tandem. It makes sense because they're both really good 1AA programs in the Big Sky. The problem is I don't think either one of those schools financially can cope with going from 65 scholarships where they are right now to 85. That's a huge financial investment for schools that have this amount of money in the box. So it sounds good to get 2 really good Big Sky 1AA powers in your conference, because that's where Boise came from, you know, and that's where Nevada Reno came from. But at the end of the day, I don't know that Montana State can afford to fund. And again, this is Title IX stuff. You know, if you take football scholarships, go from 65 to 85, you're going to match that amount of money for women's sports at Montana State. So it's a very complex situation right now. So that's the update on the conferences. You think Vegas brings anything to the table? You think Air Force to the Pac-12 makes sense? Why the hell do you want – you're going to go see Memphis and Tulane in the Pac-12? John, go ahead.
Well, Memphis makes some sense. Their basketball program's been good. Their football program's been one of the top ones in the group of 5, but not Tulane. I mean, Tulane is like a minor league organization over there. Now, Air Force I want to talk about for a minute, because it is interesting going into the American Athletic Conference and having all the military schools there together. But if you were to look at Army, Navy, Air Force, which of the 3 has the most prestigious sports program?
I would probably say Air Force. Air Force football's been really good. Odd bad year. Troy Calhoun's having a tough year this year, but I think Air Force. Army's been way down in football. Navy, of course, had David Robinson. Navy football has been decent, and of course had David Robinson as kind of a unique athlete. But I'd say the Air Force Academy. But at the end of the day, all the people that have come through Annapolis, West Point, and gone to Colorado Springs, I mean, that's a global following. To me, that makes great sense to have them as a conference member. Hell, the Pac-12, I wouldn't mind having those 3 military schools because there's a credibility, is that the correct term, as to what these institutions mean to their alumni? And they have a global following.
Interesting. I mean, it's always weird when the Aztecs play Air Force because, you know, you always wonder if they're diminished or limited in what they can do as a program. But on top of it, it's at elevation. I mean, we were hoping to get out of elevation by getting out of the Mountain West, and that's the second highest, 7,700 feet or something. You know, so it's an interesting topic. It makes sense probably from the Pac-12 perspective, but you look at the Mountain West, Montana State, that just makes them more of a junior varsity conference.
But that's who they are. You are what you are.
You are what your record says you are. Yeah. So to me, this is just all fascinating, the way the shells are moving around. The ACC, remember, it used to be that was just the ultimate conference for basketball.
Sure.
And they've fallen a lot. So when you say they're getting, what was it, $44 million, that's just football only, right?
No, that's for the whole media package, just football and basketball.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, the guy in the other street corner, Southeastern Conference, Alabama and the boys, they get $60 million per school in media rights money.
Show me the money.
Yeah.
You know, it's like these NFL quarterbacks all wanting to one-up because the guy next to him is making more money.
Oh, you just want to buy your ticket to go see a game at Tulane. I know your shtick. Okay, that's the latest on college athletics. Today, interesting day. Hockey Hotline. NHL training camps opened across the board today for all 30 teams in the National Hockey League.
Really? All right, here we go.
Okay, let me just run through storylines in these camps. And if you're a hockey fan, the O Canada Network, you're invited to jump on board to give me a response. Columbus Blue Jackets opened their camp today under the cloud cover of the terrible death of Johnny Hockey. And they're trying to deal with that. B, they're trying to deal with the loss of a guy that scored 230 goals over the course of his career. So that's a big storyline with the Columbus Blue Jackets. Washington Capitals. Good luck to you. You got Alexander Ovechkin. Now you got Pierre-Luc Dubois, who came from the Kings. I'll be interested to see if the Capitals management can unlock the mystery of who this big power forward is and why he doesn't play like a power forward. Keep an eye on that. Montreal. Your turn to solve the problem with Patrik-Laine. This guy talked himself out of Winnipeg. This guy talked himself out of Columbus. This guy got himself suspended last year because of substance problems. Montreal took him on. This is a great hockey player, goal scorer, but has just never done it on a consistent basis and all that junk off the ice. Toronto Maple Leafs, historic franchise. They got 2 veterans that they've just told yesterday we're not going to do a contract extension right now. A longtime center, former captain John Tavares, high-scoring right-winger Mitch Marner have been told, you play out the final year of your contract. Both of them making $10 million a season. That's going to be fascinating to see because the Leafs have taken care of all their other players. By the way, Toronto just signed Max Pacioretty. Scored 330 goals over the course of his career. That's a pretty good hockey player, so keep an eye on that. He's a veteran coming off injuries. Colorado, this is not good news. Gabe Landeskog, who is their superstar captain, suffered a really bad knee injury 2 years ago, underwent kind of creative knee cartilage replacement surgery. He has practiced, he's done all the rehab, he's been fanatical about that. He's still not ready to play after 2 years of intensive rehab. I just don't know that he's ever going to play again. And they've also got problems with 2 other guys, including Val Nichushkin, big power forward, scored a lot of goals. He's been in substance abuse programs 3 times, and he's not in camp right now. So Colorado's got issues. Ducks, orange country, new uniforms really look cool.
Nice.
Do they have good players to put in the new uniforms? That's an iffy thing. It's going to be fascinating because today on the ice, they debuted Cutter Gauthier, young All-American, Boston College, scored a ton of goals. Last year, this week, we were talking about Leo Carlsson, who came from Sweden. He played really well as a part-time rookie. They've just got a plethora of really young players. They just don't have a lot of veterans around those young players. And by the way, they still have Trevor Zegras is still there, and the rumor is they're shopping him in a trade. Cam Fowler, their 10-year veteran defenseman, still there, and he's agreed to waive his no-trade clause if it's the right deal, and goaltender John Gibson is still being held hostage there. So the Ducks are really young, really good young skaters and draft picks. They got all these issues with veterans that they're trying to move. L.A. Kings, last chance saloon. If they don't go deep in the playoffs this time, I don't think it's ever going to happen. You know, Adrian Kempe, Anze Kopitar, Drew Doughty. I mean, these are high-paid veterans, and a team has just not been able to get beyond the first round of the playoffs because the Edmonton Oilers have been the opponent. It's got to happen this year, or it's never, ever going to happen. Then they might be facing a massive rebuild. And in Edmonton, we talked extensively of the greatness of Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, and, you know, how they pushed to get to the Stanley Cup Finals and almost doggone won it last season. Well, they did something different in the offseason. Every veteran wants to finish up with a chance to get a ring. They signed 3 veteran forwards to play on maybe their 3rd and 4th lines who all have a history of scoring goals. The guys are coming in on low-price contracts because they want a ring. Jeff Skinner came from Buffalo, had over 400 goals over the course of his career. They just signed Mike Hoffman, who scored 300-plus goals. He was with Montreal and Florida before that. And they got Victor Arvidsson, a pretty good two-way player who can pot some goals. He came from the LA Kings. So it's interesting. Usually your 3rd and 4th line guys are just young guys who serve roles. They're bringing in all these veterans who've potted a lot of goals other places. And if you can start getting goal scoring on your 3rd and 4th line to go with McDavid and Draisaitl and Evander Kane, etc., you're going to be a really dangerous team. So Edmonton's taken a little bit different tact as to how they're going to build their third and fourth lines on the team. So those are some of the hot storylines today, the first day everybody on the ice across the entire National Hockey League. And John Riley, with beer in one hand and hockey puck in the other, banging on the plexiglass behind the penalty box, has got an opinion.
Well, how do NHL teams conduct their camps? Because I think of baseball, they have all the minor league guys, and they're playing scrimmages, and then they've got multiple fields. Is hockey the same way?
The Ducks opened today. They had 66 on the training camp roster. I think the max limit you can have is 70. They do a 3-tiered practice. They have the veterans practice first shift, 9 a.m. hour. I think at 10:30, the next group of players comes in and practice. And then usually the 11:45 or 12 noon practice is pretty much for all the young guys just to get their legs underneath them and skate, etc. Those are the guys that will wind up either going back to junior hockey, or maybe some might be go back to Europe. Some of them might wind up here in San Diego with a goal. So it's a 3-schedule thing because you got so many guys on the ice, and that's what they do. And then they'll start playing games, and not everybody plays in every game. You'll play a game against San Jose on a Friday, and then you'll come back on a Saturday, maybe you play Las Vegas. So you have one group of guys who'll play the first preseason game, then another group of that roster of 66 will play the second game. And then as you get into the fourth and fifth preseason games, then they start making roster cuts, and your roster kind of comes together. But that's how they do it because you got so many guys in camp.
When they go to the preseason games, do they keep the veterans like on the bench, kind of like the NFL does, or do they play them?
No, they play them. Now, whether those guys are playing all out, I don't think so. Because guys do not, the veterans do not want to get hurt.
Right.
I've had general managers tell me, watch this in camp. And I was at the Ducks camp. I went to the Kings camp. And the veterans, I'm not saying going through the motions. They are skating when they scrimmage and all that. But it's not 110%. You got the rookies going 110% trying to make the team or impress somebody.
Yeah. And
so the rookies are of the opinion, hey, I played pretty well against the Kings' number one line. Well, the Kings' number one line was just kind of going through the motions here, pal. You got to opening night. It's like a different world for these kids. So it's fascinating to see how those camps work.
Yeah, they're growing up on the job.
Oh, yeah, it is. Okay, that's the latest around the National Hockey League. Last topic on the table before we open it up for you and Fans Forum. If you're a hockey fan, feel free, especially those on the O Canada Network, jump in on board. They have talked for almost 2 years. They, the PGA Tour, and the LIV, they are no closer to a deal. And Rory McIlroy popped off this week in Europe, indicating this merger is not going to go through. He says, if we put this up to a vote, more than 60% of the players would vote against it. And was asked by some of the global media, why is that? He says there's a couple things at play here. One, the players on the PGA Tour right now are the few superstars, the Schefflers, Scotty Scheffler, Rory, superstars, and young guys who have elevated themselves and are winning tournaments. He said the players are, quote, protecting their own interest. Their own interest is, why would I want to bring other superstars back in to the field and change everything that pushes a whole bunch of guys down in their earning ability? He said the second item is, to a man, there's nobody that wants to welcome those guys back who violated the PGA Tour card and took the payments, the blood money, to go to Saudi Arabia and to play in LIV. We won't let them back in unless they pay a penalty or they pay their way back in. And that's, the negotiations are stuck over that these guys want payback for being loyal, and they want those guys to pay a penalty for having jumped to take that money. So people have not forgiven Phil Mickelson or Dustin Johnson, Brooks Koepka, DeChambeau, no matter how great the players are, have not forgiven them what they did to the PGA Tour. So 2 years into all these negotiations, they are no closer today than they were the first time you and I brought this topic up on the table. Said, hey, a global tour where we finally have peace, that would be good for the sport, because to me, the sport is suffering. The TV ratings are monstrously bad right now. Outside of the marquee events, we all watch the British Open and the Masters, etc., but nobody's watching anything else. And the LIV, I watch the LIV. It's on KUSI, where I do the weekend sports packages on Saturday. I mean, I'm shocked at home, and I dial across it, and I'm watching the 18th hole on Sunday, and there's like 38 people on the 18th hole watching the final round of the final hole. There's nobody in the stands. Nobody's paying attention, not on anybody's radar, and they think it's working well. And I think LIV has just burned through an enormous amount of money, and I don't think they're getting any positive feedback from it. So, John, your thoughts on what Rory McIlroy had to say?
This is so weak. I mean, Rory McIlroy, I give him credit trying to get everyone together and being a leader. But if you're a player in the PGA and you're saying, I don't want those other Bryce and DeChambeau to come in because they're really good and I might not make the cut, that's weak. I mean, this is pro golf at the highest level. You can't be keeping competitors out. Now, the whole thing about, they left for the blood money, and they don't want to allow them to come back. But we've seen this in the NFL with the USFL. Remember when they split up? And then some of those players came back, like Jim Kelly and who was the other one? Herschel Walker, yeah. But when they did that, did the NFL zing them when they came back?
No, because the USFL went out of business. They folded because Donald Trump and those guys spent so much money and they couldn't get the money back. And then suddenly the league went out of business, and the league sued and got $1. They won the court case, and they were awarded $1. They had sued over antitrust violation. But when those players became free agents and they all went into a draft, and that's how Herschel Walker wound up in Minnesota, and Jim Kelly wound up going from the Houston Gamblers to Buffalo, et cetera. But that's because the league folded. LIV has not ceased operation. I think everything would change if the public investment firm of Saudi Arabia said, we're not going to fund this anymore. Then that league would go away. But we're two years into it. They've paid volumes of money to these players. Players are playing abroad, some in Europe, playing more tournaments here. Nobody's going to the tournaments here. They have a second-rate TV package, and nobody's attracted to it despite all the marquee names.
You know what's going to happen if they're not careful is that the PGA is going to become irrelevant, and all the focus will be on LIV, and PGA will be like, minor league. It'll be like the NIT tournament in basketball, so I'd be afraid of that. I mean, I think this is a real threat because that the Saudis would love to take it all over and make it a global sport, and they're in charge.
Are you going to ask DeChambeau and Brooks Koepka and Dustin Johnson and Phil, and there's like 35 who left, you're going to ask them to pay a penalty to come back or pay their way back in?
To me, that's a trivial detail. You want to make them make a penalty? Yeah, fine. It doesn't need to be crazy. Maybe it's like, I don't know, for them, and we're talking big money for them, but like maybe it's $15,000, $20,000, just something. Yeah, let them in. I mean, make the sport competitive, because why are you penalizing these guys? Let's
they violated their tour card.
So what? Just bring them back and do the right thing. And if you've got to assess a penalty just to feel like you're keeping them down and kind of wagging your finger at them, then fine. But don't make the penalty like $1 million or something. Just let them in. Let's just bring them together. Let's just get going.
You could argue with me, but I think you'd be wrong.
Yeah.
Okay. Those are hot topics on the table. Do we have any golf fans? Join us. Fans Forum box is open right now. We're going to go to that in a second. This podcast is brought to you by DIXIELINE Lumber and Home Centers. 9 locations to serve you in San Diego. You got questions about projects, you want ideas. They got materials, and they can be your consultant. Sample what they have to offer. Just go to DIXIELINE.com or stop at one of the 9 DIXIELINE locations to serve you. John, I think we hit a few hot buttons. Do we have anybody who wants to join us in Fans Forum?
There's a lot of people piling in. There's some new names and faces in the list, too. But let's start it off with Callan. He says, good afternoon, gents. I went to all 3 games against Houston. That definitely had the high drama and tension of a playoff series. You could cut that tension with a knife, especially on Tuesday night.
Can you imagine the electricity, a home playoff game, if it involved the Dodgers in San Diego? I mean, this has been of all the years I've been here, I came here in 1987, this has been the most fun summer of baseball because the team has been good, team's been hot, team has won unbelievable games in comeback fashion. Anybody in that batting order can hurt you, and now they got pitching. This collectively is as good a pitching staff I think we've seen in a long period of time. Going back to the Kevin Brown era and the Hitchcock era way back in the past World Series teams, but no, Callum is correct. I mean, Petco Park, it's just electric.
It was a great series. And the fact that Padres won 2 out of 3, could have won all 3 of them. But what's your take? Like, I know your one man's opinion column, you were getting on the umpires and all the controversy, with Altuve taking his shoe off. He looked like a hobbit out there from Lord of the Rings. I mean, what's your take on all the drama from that Tuesday game?
Umpiring was incompetent. It was inconsistent. And I just kind of lost my mind. I wrote a one man's opinion column about the men in blue giving baseball a black eye. I think the umpiring, as it relates to rules interpretations and all the delays with instant replays and then the extended arguments, and that doesn't include the moving strike zone and all that other crapola that we deal with on a regular basis. Umpiring is so out of control, and if there's no consistency in the umpiring, if they bring the robo-umping with computers, then I don't want to hear any bitching because the umps have been so erratic and so poor. But, I mean, first of all, it was a full moon, right?
Okay.
That night was a full moon,
all right.
And it became a bizarre baseball game.
Here's the voodoo.
Yeah, with all the antics, and Altuve taking his shoe off and a sock off to show the ump, and the umpire looks down, and then he throws him out of the game. And holy cow, it just was nonstop.
One of the weird things in that game was the so-called hit by pitch of Profar.
Yeah.
Because he wasn't hit, and both benches were angry about it, which was funny because I think Profar wanted to get that game-winning knock.
Sure.
But, that game, Machado and Tatis struck out, and they had the opportunity to win all 3. But you got to give credit, man, back to back to back. We have Tatis, Manny, and Donovan Solano. This is good vibes right now. And imagine what Petco is going to be like. It's going to be great.
At this time of the year, there's only 2 things that are important. Are you hot? Mm-hmm. Are you healthy?
Okay.
Padres, yes. Check off both boxes right now.
Yeah. Dodgers, sort of, and no.
Exactly. Callum, thanks for joining us on Fans Forum. Next one. Okay, let's go to Javi, and he says, Padres better not hope they play the Mets in the wild card. Well, the Mets are rolling. I think the Mets have now won, I want to say, 16 of their last 21. I look at the Mets lineup, and it doesn't scare you, except they got guys who put the ball in play, and they got a couple guys who can pop some home runs. And I look at the Mets rotation, and I say, how the hell can they be red hot and forging their way into the playoffs with a pitching staff that does not have Kodai Senga? He's hardly pitched at all because of the calf and elbow problems, and he's the ace. How can you be that hot with Jose Quintana and some of these other guys? But the Mets have earned it. Carlos Mendoza has pushed a lot of the right buttons, and yeah, Mets are kind of dangerous right now. But if they get into the last wild card spot because they're in this chokehold fight with Atlanta for the final slot, they have to play all the games on the road. And that's tough. You won't be going to Citi Field. So that's a big issue. But they've earned it, because they dug out of a big hole very early in the season.
Sean Manaea is still pitching for them and having a good year, right?
Hell yes. And how's that possible?
That doesn't make any sense to me. And they've got a lot of other guys that, you know about Alonso, about Lindor, but there's still a lot of other guys on the Mets you're just kind of scratching your head about.
Yeah, and every once in a while you pop up in a box score and Brandon Nemo's hit a game-winning 3-run home run. Who?
Yeah, Brandon Nemo, Finding Nemo. So the Mets have been terrific. It'd be interesting because 2 years ago the Padres went to New York to play the Mets. Maybe it's going to be the other way around this year.
Well, the key to the Padres is if you can't finish first and catch the Dodgers. I don't know if the Dodgers are going to crumble here, but I don't think so because they're playing the Rockies and the Marlins to finish this thing out before they get the Padres. But if the key then is the Padres to finish first, because that means home field in the wild card round, which is critical, and they're playing so well at Petco Park right now. So the last week of the season is really cool.
Yeah, it's fantastic. This is what makes the sport great. Okay, this next question, we're going to put you on the spot here. This is from Yin, and she says, Lee, who you picking to win the WNBA championship?
Tell you what, the Connecticut Sun, they look so different than they looked early in the season. And, Indiana Fever, what Caitlin Clark has done they were 3-10 at one point. And right now she looks like she could be not only Rookie of the Year, maybe MVP. But I think that, what's going on in Connecticut is they just got so much firepower and they're playing so much better basketball now. And Chicago's been pretty good with their number 1 draft pick has played very well. I read something this morning. It was really strange. It was its condemnation of Magic Johnson and the people that own the LA Sparks, They just finished their season 7-32, and that was once proud team, won championships and all that with Candace Parker. 7-32, last worst record in the WNBA. So there's going to be some upheaval in Los Angeles with that franchise, but Connecticut looks really good. This has been just a mystical year. I mean, it started with all the attention on Caitlin Clark, but then if you read the storylines of other star players and how some of them have really emerged into complete players and made their teams complete basketball teams, WNBA's arrow is pointed way up in terms of attendance and TV ratings, and I just think global interest.
Dude, you are amazing.
You're damn right. Bleeping brilliant is the correct term.
It's anyone could ask any sports question, and man, you're ready. You've got the data. You know who's trending, who's hot, who's not. I mean, for me, I'm looking at this question. If I was to answer the question honestly, I would probably say, or I will say, I don't know, because I'm learning more about the WNBA. I'll probably watch some of the playoff games and find a team to root for. But it's awesome how you follow everything.
I know what I know. I apologize in advance for being a pompous ass. Thank you.
Okay.
Next question.
Okay, let's go here to Rob, because Lee, is Mike Trout is moving to a corner outfield spot going to help him stay healthy, or do you see him moving permanently to designated hitter next year?
Well, he's the one that put that topic up for discussion about I'm willing to do it. I'm not going to waive my no-trade clause. I want to stay here. DH keeps him out of the line of fire getting hurt. And the fact that virtually all of his injuries have come while playing in the outfield, whether that's catching a cleat in the turf and tearing up a knee, or a calf injury, or running into the fence and injuring a foot and an ankle. He's just had so many physical problems. So if he can be my DH and be Mike Trout, vintage Mike Trout, then you go find other players. But he's a unique guy. He does not want out.
Who are the Angels using as their designated hitter now? It's like, is there some guy that's just like all bat and can't field?
No, Rendon has played some DH because of injuries, and they just kind of rotate other guys around. They had the first baseman there for a while. It's just their lineup's a mishmash. They've got a couple of really good young kids. This young catcher, Logan O'Hoppe, hit with power, although he hits 220. Shortstop Zach Neto has hit with some power. Now, he's kind of cooled off. He's played an awful lot of innings. He might be down on the 240s, 250s right now. Chanel, the first baseman. They had another first baseman on the way, although he's not hit for average in the minor leagues. They just don't have a complete roster, and then your roster, the rest of your roster is made up by journeyman guys, and the Brandon Drurys of the world, and some of these other people. And as much as we like Moniak and Adele was a high number one pick, they're 205 hitters. You can't have a preponderance of those type guys or guys hitting 240 in your everyday lineup. So they got a lot of massive work to do in terms of player personnel.
Who are the big name free agents that are going to come on the board this year?
Well, it starts with Juan Soto and it ends with Juan Soto, but there are very few people who can bid on Juan Soto because of the agent. And then you got the opt-out guys. Your guy, Blake Snell's, he's going to opt out. Now, Matt Chapman elected not to opt out. He's staying in Frisco. Cody Bellinger is going to opt out in Chicago. So, the Scott Boras roster will be really the marquee names to pay attention to.
Imagine if Soto went to the Angels. Wouldn't that be just weird?
I guess anything's weird. But if they wouldn't pay Ohtani, who is established and very credible and very popular, what makes you think they would pay to deal with Scott Boras, who Arte Moreno does not like?
Yeah, I mean, it'd be hard to believe it would happen, but you figure at some point the Angels and Arte Moreno are say, darn it, we need to make this team better, and let's go for it. Let's go out and get the number one or the number two players in free agency.
But you didn't do it with Ohtani. So what makes you think he's going to do it for somebody else, including Boris's clients?
That whole franchise is just a mystery. It's a cluster. It doesn't make any sense.
All right. Nice to hear from you. Thank you. Yes.
Okay, let's go here to Carlos. Padres can beat the Dodgers. Go Padres. All we got to do is play good in the playoffs.
He's answering the question. Who's the better team right now? Who's the team that scares you the most? Padres, they're healthy and they're hot. The Dodgers are not.
No. And the playoffs are going to be great, but really we're in the playoffs right now.
Sure.
I mean, you got to win every game going in. Now, I think it's reasonable to assume that the Padres will make the playoffs probably the Diamondbacks. But do you think the Braves or the Mets are going to get that last spot?
Atlanta has had so many guys hurt, and they're just running uphill, and they just can't put a hot streak together. And the Mets just have been relentless. I never thought this was possible with the Mets. In fact, I thought they were going to have a dreadful season. I looked at their pitching staff coming out of spring training in the grapefruit circuit, and I said, hell, you can't be in a pennant race with that starting pitching. Well, that starting pitching and their bullpen has gotten progressively better, or at least been more consistent. They've had virtually, outside of the Kodai Senga injury to their frontline starter, they've had no physical woes with their rotation. One of the few teams that I think has given the ball to virtually all their guys and have all made 30 starts this season. But so I think the Mets are probably going to wind up getting in and they'll be that third wild card team.
The Grimace did it, right?
Oh, yeah.
The Grimace threw out the first pitch, and they've been good ever since. Okay, let's move on. Let's go to Chris. And he says, sure, Padres coming together at the right time with contributions from everyone, but their success can be mostly attributed to the fact that Dr. Jack Kevorkian is heading the Dodgers medical staff these days. Kike Hernandez now trending to start Game 2 in the postseason.
Oh, that just feel free to pile on those people on the disabled list. Although it's interesting because we did a commentary. I wrote a column about the Dodger way maybe 3 weeks ago at the height of this mess. Well, I went through a laundry list of all their pitchers who had surgeries. It was shocking. As we sit here this afternoon, you have to refresh my memory. I can't recall all these numbers, but I think that the Dodgers have had 19 pitchers on the disabled list this season. Dodgers have had 12 starting pitchers on the disabled list. I think the Dodgers have right now they've used 13 different starting pitchers this season. And virtually all their young guys have had some form of elbow or shoulder surgery. And like 4 or 5 of them have not really come back. And the ones that have come back, I'm a huge Walker Buehler fan. You never know every 5th day what kind of start you're going to get from him. They just sent Bobby Miller, who had a phenomenal August, September for them last year. They sent him and his 8.52 ERA back to Oklahoma City this morning. And now the bad news that Gavin Stone, who tried to throw a bullpen, has got more soreness in his shoulder. He's pitched over 140 innings. Had never thrown that many innings before. I mean, I'm just going through this list of all the marquee guys. If you had them in your rotation healthy, you'd say, hey, we're going deep in the playoffs. They don't have any of them now.
Well, you wouldn't have enough room on the roster if they were all heavy. I mean, you'd have like 9 or 10, solid starters. This is unbelievable. But, a lot of fans are saying, Hacksaw, you're just bashing the Dodgers. You hate the Dodgers. Why are you ripping them? This is an epidemic that's everywhere in baseball, not just L.A.
But they're at the epicenter of it. They've got more guys. Yes, baseball has a severe problem with elbow surgeries and the demand that everybody throw triple-figure miles per hour velocity. But the Dodgers lead the world in surgeries, et cetera. And I'm not bagging on anybody. I'm just giving you the facts. I went through it of all the pitchers who've been hurt. That's why I got to read my columns every day on my website. I just kind of do stuff. So 3 weeks after I wrote about the Dodger way not working, the LA Times did this great investigative piece. The Dodgers have used the disabled list 98 times in 3 years because of pitching injuries. Now, some of those guys have gone on the DL 3 or 4 times. That's 98
That's unbelievable.
times, yeah. So it's just a crisis. And they're going to have to evaluate their demands on their pitchers, what they're teaching their pitchers. And then, last week, Walker Buehler, we talked about this on the podcast. Walker Buehler made the public comment, I understand what's gone on. They teach us max effort. We know that if we throw 100 or we throw the wide variety of pitches that are out there now for us to throw, we can be successful and we'll get a contract. And I'm doing it. And if I get hurt, so be it. I'm a pitcher. That's Walker Buehler's reaction to the Dodgers becoming the epicenter of all the elbow problems in baseball.
Is Ohtani going to throw this year?
He's thrown 6 bullpens. Now, that's the wild card conversation right now. Now, Ohtani said last night he has not had a conversation yet with Andrew Friedman nor Dave Roberts about actually pitching in postseason. But that rumor is out there. And if they pitched him, it would be probably 1 inning and there'd be a pitch limit. But he's throwing in the 6 bullpens. He's ramped it up to the point he's thrown 25 to 30 pitches, max effort in the bullpen. He's had no setbacks.
Well, that's better than Gavin Stone, I'll tell you.
Oh, tough time. So, hey, I'm not piling on the Dodgers nor the Padres. I'm just telling you this is what I observe from the information I have. Hey, you're better that you have the knowledge that I present. Now, you may not agree with the opinions. That's okay. Next question.
Let's go to El Duque. He goes, Artie Moreno gets lots of crap, but he spends money, unlike the Rockies owner.
Well, he spends money, but he's also spent it really, really badly. And Montfort is a different situation in Colorado. Now, I will say this. If you look at the everyday lineup of the Rockies, I mean, they force-fed their kids. That young shortstop, Ezekiel Tovar, that's a really good player. And Brendan Rodgers. And they've got probably 4 to 5 everyday guys that have now proven they can play at the major league level. And they still have the old dog and Charlie Blackmon. But they got to find pitching because they've been wiped out by elbow injuries. You know, Herman Marquez has not pitched in a year and a half, and he was the ace of the staff and got hurt again. And Kyle Freeland, who I thought was tremendously promising, he's pitching against the Dodgers this week, and he spent most of this year on the DL with forearm problems. They've got to find a way to get some more pitching in there. But they do have good young everyday players, but spend some money. To me, and that's the thing that really offends me, that's a great regional franchise. They drew $4 million back in the Matt Holliday era. And
didn't touch home plate
yet, and the Todd Helton era and all that. So that could be a phenomenal. I mean, you imagine if you draw 4 million fans from the Rocky Mountain region, the amount of money you'd make. So invest. And Dick Montfort has not done that. So, El Duque is kind of correct about the owner being cheap, and the owner's methodology doesn't work. But they do have young players, but they just got to get more pitching.
You know, it's interesting you say it could be a great regional franchise, kind of like the Cardinals, you know?
Sure.
Because there's not a lot of other teams geographically to compete. So if they've got a good radio signal, I mean, you know, TV, they could build a really nice fan base.
Well, they proved it when they drew over 4 million for a couple of years during the Todd Helton era.
Exactly. But, you know, Montfort spent money on Chris Bryant, and then look how that turned out.
It broke down.
Yeah, so they ended up spending money on the wrong guys. Remember, you was another pitcher that went there was Billy Swift. Remember that guy? Because I remember he was on the Giants.
He was in Seattle.
In Seattle, yeah.
He was pretty good, and he broke down when he got there.
But I remember they were saying that, or they were questioning whether or not his stuff would work at the altitude, because a lot of times for pitchers, it just flattens out.
Yep. So, tough place to play. You got a unique player. You know, the signing of Bryant, who had done great things with the Cubs. He was the number 1 pick coming out of USD, and he hit for power and all that. And then he went to the Giants. That's the kind of guy, if he's healthy with power, that's the kind of guy you want in Colorado.
Oh, definitely.
Power. That's the kind of guy you want in Cincinnati. That's the kind of guy you want in Philadelphia. I mean, because they can put up big numbers, especially at home. But he's just been cursed. He's had so many injuries, and you know, from calf to thumb to wrist and now he's got a chronic back problem. In fact, I don't know if Chris Bryant's ever going to play again. I think they may eat the contract, collect the insurance policy, and just say we tried and it didn't work.
Brutal. I mean, that guy has spent more time injured than on the field for the Rockies.
Next question, Fans Forum. Who else got something to say?
Let's go to Steve. He goes, what's your take on the Chargers so far? I like their start, but Herbert in the offense looks off a bit.
Well, they have 3 number 1 draft picks in the offensive front. I think the thing that surprises me is they have not pass blocked very well. Herbert's had a lot of pressure on him, and now he got dinged. I don't know that I played Justin Herbert this week in Pittsburgh. He hasn't practiced this week because he got crushed right at the end of the game in Carolina, in a game maybe he should not have been in the lineup at that point in time because they were blowing Carolina out. But you know, the Bolts are running the ball really well. Of course, that was against the Raiders and a really substandard Carolina team. This is going to be big boy football Sunday at 10 a.m. against the Pittsburgh Steelers because that Pittsburgh defense is really rugged. I just wouldn't play Justin Herbert this week. You got a whole football season ahead. I'd hate to have him have to be a pocket passer with the risk he get tagged again and get, re-injure that ankle or that leg. More, I went back and looked in slow motion at the video if he got hurt. I mean, I thought he might have broken his leg at the lower, right above the ankle. He just got bent at such a really bad angle. So they look like they could be a pretty good team, but they still got to play some big boys next on the schedule. And it starts this weekend because they get Kansas City after they play Pittsburgh.
Oh, here we go. Yeah. Well, my bet is that Herbert will be out there. I mean, he's like a tough guy, right? He's going to play through pain, don't you think?
He has, historically. But you don't want to get him hurt. You still got 14 more weeks after this weekend in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, and then you got T.J. Watt that wants to body slam him on the turf at well, not Three Rivers anymore. What is it, Heinz Field?
No, it's named after an insurance company, Acrisure Insurance now.
New
It's
sponsor.
Yeah, new sponsor last year.
All right.
John, you got to get out of the house more to understand all this important stuff.
I do. Okay, let's move on. Let's go here to Angel, and he wants to talk about the Rams. He goes, even without Kupp and Nuka, the Rams have a shot at an upset of the Niners, and the Niners not going to have McCaffrey or Debo.
No, I concur. But again, this is almost an all backup offensive line trying to protect Matthew Stafford. He took a lot of hits last week. I think he's been sacked 7 times in 2 weeks. And now you're playing Nick Bosa and the 49ers, and you're telling me, Angel, that they can protect Stafford? I don't know about that. And his top 2 receivers are gone. I mean, he's got journeyman backups. I just think this is going to be a very rugged weekend. And they've had so many injuries. I mean, now that they're at the point, as we talked about early in the podcast, they got a problem with how many guys they can put on IR because you can only bring 8 guys back. And they've got all these offensive linemen on injured reserve, and you got 3 of their top 4 DBs are on IR, and they're going to try to bring them all back once they finally get healthy. So now there's a limitation. Last year they had no injuries. That was a byproduct of what turned out to be a 10-win season when everybody was projecting, myself included, they're going to have a lousy year last year and a rebuild. Instead, everybody was healthy. This year, they never got out of camp healthy, and now it's gotten even worse since.
That backup running back for the 49ers has done very well so far.
Yeah, Mason.
Yeah, and so, filling in for McCaffrey, which is a big ask. But I saw a stack ranking of all the running backs and max yards, who has the most. Dobbins, number 1, but I think the Niners running back was number 3 or 4.
Yeah, exactly. He's done very well in his first 2 games. He came out of nowhere. I thought it was a 5th-round draft pick or something, but big and physical, and so far so good.
Where's the game going to be?
Is it Frisco or here?
I'm not sure.
I think it's here. I think it's in L.A.
Okay.
I think it's going to be.
Well, the Chargers are on the road, so probably the Rams are at home.
Exactly.
Okay.
Next question.
Moving on. Let's go to Joey and talking Raiders. He goes, how's the Raider fan? I'm still feeling the effects of Josh McDaniels. I think Antonio Pierce has the team in the right direction, but getting rid of Derek Carr was clearly a mistake. Go Raiders.
Well, I think they felt they'd run the course with Derek Carr, and he was making a lot of money, and maybe they didn't see any more upside. And of course, they've gone through coaching changes all the time, which means philosophy changes, etc. And I like what they've done defensively. I think getting Christian Wilkins in that defensive tackle spot, I'm surprised Miami let him go, though that was a cap issue. You get Christian Wilkins with Max Crosby, and if they can never get the 2 right defensive ends healthy, led by Mal Kuntz, and their linebackers are pretty good. It's a very different personality defensively now. To me, they still have answers in the offensive front. They got a lot of young pieces there. And, at the beginning last week, I watched chunks of that game, and Gardner Minshew in the beginning had an interception, a fumble, and 3 sacks in the first 2 possessions, and they were losing. I think they were down 16-6. I said, oh, God, this is going to be awful. And then what they did is they kind of changed up the playbook, and they started to throw to the tight ends, and then they started to throw to Devontae Adams. And I said to myself, why have you waited 1.5 games into the schedule before you started to do this? If they had done that against the Chargers, they might have beaten the Bolts at that time because the defense had really throttled Justin Herbert. And then Dobbins kind of took over the game in the second half. But throw to Devontae, throw to the 2 tight ends, throw to the other wide receiver, Jacoby Myers. Now, they have at this point, their running game is really negligible. Antonio Pierce stood up at a meeting and said, you guys are piss poor, pointing at the offensive line and the running backs because they haven't run the ball worth a lick at all. So, now they're going to cause problems with other defenses because can you defend both tight ends and both wideouts? Because I think they're going to commit to throw the ball a lot more. They're not there yet, and I'm not even sure you can still trust Minshew because he drives me crazy. He turns the ball over way too much, and that's just not here. That's historically. When he was in Jacksonville and Philadelphia and the other places he's been around the league.
Well, he's entertaining. I'll give him that. Yeah, but the Raiders, maybe they're going for the vertical game. Al Davis, right? You got all these receivers, wideouts. Now, what's your take on Antonio Pierce as a coach? Because he got a lot of crap from the game 1 when he punted in Charger territory.
4th and 1.
What was your opinion on that call?
I thought they should have gone for it. You're trying to get momentum. You're trying to stay in the game or climb back in the game. Just do it. I mean, when you're 4th and 1 in at the other guy's 40 and your defense has throttled Herbert, go for the first down. Go for the points. But at that point, they were settling more for field goals than they were for touchdowns. So it's easy to second-guess a coach. You don't, he knows a little bit more about what guys are playing well on his offense and what guys are not playing well right now. Pierce gets him to play hard, though, and he is mouthy. He is so polar opposite from the general manager, Tom Telesco. It's absolutely amazing. At the end of the game in Baltimore, and that was a huge win for the Raiders, they have video that I saw of Pierce running down the tunnel from the field, and right at the door of the locker room is Tom Telesco, the general manager, former Charger general manager. And Tom Telesco is Harvard-educated type guy.
Yeah.
And Antonio Pierce is from Compton, street guy.
Okay.
And Pierce ran up and grabbed him and picked him up. And, of course, Pierce played for Belichick and Parcells in the NFL. He's jumping up and down. I thought he was going to crush Telesco. He was so excited. So we'll see. They're 2 games into it. Let's just see as they go and what this turns out to be. Now, they're playing Carolina this weekend. Boy, that, so they should be 2-0 or 2-1 by the time we get to Sunday night.
Well, and then plus they're benching Bryce Young, right? So, so this could be, maybe the Raiders might have a surprise year. Wouldn't that be something?
Yep, that'd be good for the NFL. As you would say, if the Raiders are doing well, the NFL is doing well.
Exactly. It's always good to have like a evil, the evil empire out there on the field,
and that fits their persona.
Okay, let's get a hockey comment in here. This is from XX Revolution. It says, Rogers Canada gets most of the ownership of Toronto sports, so the Leafs may go deep in the playoffs, but let's see.
Well, they have to do it. I mean, the salary, they have a salary cap in the NHL. The amount of money they pay their stars, the Austin Matthews, et cetera, is just phenomenal. Between Matthews, Marner, Nylander, and Tavares, that's a phenomenal amount of money. Now, that means they can't pay other guys, their support forwards or their defensemen or their goaltenders, mega bucks. But it's time to win. They haven't won a Stanley Cup since 1967. That's one of the richest, most tradition-laden teams in the National Hockey League. It's not like Rogers Communications, which owns majority control of the Maple Leafs and a whole bunch of other things. It's not like they can pour all the amount of money they want because there is a salary cap in the league. But their ability to get the right support guys around the stars, like a 60-goal scorer like Austin Matthews, just have not been able to do it. That's why I said the thing that just happened in Edmonton this week where they brought in these 3 veterans who all scored goals, are all 34, 35, but those guys want to win a ring, and I think they can with McDavid and Draisaitl. And what you got now is guys who play on your 3rd and 4th line who can score goals, because usually your 3rd and 4th line are just checkers or young players. So Edmonton's taken a little bit different tack. Toronto has just not been able to get the level of their 3rd and 4th line guys to be consistent contributors, if that makes sense.
Well, when you think of the original 6, the Maple Leafs and the Canadiens have got to be at the top of that list, right?
Oh, they owned it. They invented the damn sport. But, John, that's a few slap shots ago, pal.
Yeah, I'd say.
That's in the 1950s, 1960s.
That's unbelievable. I mentioned this before, but I remember as a kid playing the hockey game with the stick. It's got like a glass ceiling, and you go here and twist the arms, and the players would spin and hit the puck. And it was always the Canadiens and the Maple Leafs. I was going to say the Blue Jays, the Maple Leafs. And so to me, those are like...
That's tradition.
That's blue blood hockey. And so it is amazing it's been that long. And you're a Maple Leaf fan.
Yeah.
You've been suffering for a long time.
I have, in many more ways than one. Okay, a couple more here before we put a lid on this.
All right, let's go here to social media, get some people in. We got some good social media comments. We already did some Raiders stuff. Here, let's talk a little bit here. Oh, Tyreek Hill. This is always a good one. And this is from Alberto. He says, Lee, you probably have never in your life been physically assaulted by the police. Being a minority has been a victim firsthand of law enforcement over-the-top reactions. They should have issued the ticket and been on their way. Instead, they escalated the situation. Typical.
Well, at the end of the day, this story has really died down. At the end of the day, they're both to blame. Tyreek, the whole tinted window thing, and then Tyreek having to be hauled out of the car, and then Tyreek kind of accusing them of manhandling them. They're beating the dog out of me. Well, he didn't get punched, etc. He got roughed up. The police, I thought, overreacted. But then again, you have to understand where we are as a society right now, that when you got guys dealing with tinted windows who don't cooperate with the request of the police officer, then all of a sudden the police have to evaluate, might this guy have a weapon? Might this guy roll this down? Might this guy fire a shot at me? Because that crap has happened. I thought they grossly overreacted once they got him out of the car and they found out who he was. He was an NFL player. I think there was no need for that. Now we found out since that the officer who hauled him out has been disciplined 7 times for over-aggressiveness. But then again, that's a police officer, and they know their business. They know what's happened to their fellow police officers and how guys have been assaulted, shot, wounded, killed. So, the worst thing I've seen was the George Floyd thing. I was so sick to my stomach that was allowed to happen. And, we had Ferguson, Missouri, and just all the other incidents. So I understand where Alberto is coming from in terms of police brutality and that. And I understand why Colin Kaepernick did what Colin Kaepernick did to try to draw attention to what they felt was really something wrong in America. Have we solved it? No. Are police officers still being killed in the line of duty? Yes. Do we have an enormous problem with guns in this country and mental illness on top of that? Yes. I wish I had a solution. I wish I had an answer. I don't, because nobody wants to hear what I have to say politically. But it's just a bad scenario. But Tyreek escalated it, and then he followed up 3 days in a row at press conferences by just making offhanded things. And what bothers me is we're not talking about somebody who's got a great track record as a, quote, person. Let's keep that in mind. He's done a lot of junk off the field that he's got himself in trouble for with the police. So they're both to blame. I hope it never happens again. And if that thing happens, solve it. Don't let it escalate along the way. That's one man's opinion.
One man's opinion. Well, clearly there was a lot of blame on both sides. In my opinion, the police definitely crossed the line. They had him down like face first on the pavement. Mm-hmm. And we, there's obviously this is a big issue in society. But I'll tell you what, that's a battle. If you're being uncooperative with a cop, that's a battle you will never win. And so there's legitimate reasons to be upset with the police, but you're not going to win the battle right then. So I think it's in the best interest of the guy in the car is just to let the whole thing unfold and then fight the battle later in court. Yep. But it's unfortunate. I mean, it was a bad situation all around.
And it escalated and then it got worse days after. And when we found out at the end, the police officer, through his lawyer, tried to call to apologize, and Tyreek wouldn't take the call.
It's grudge mode, these guys.
Yeah. Okay, next one.
Okay, let's talk here a little bit of Pac-12, and this is from Noel, and he says, if they didn't give the old American their power status back with UConn winning the national championships in basketball and having schools like Memphis, Houston, and Cincinnati, plus with them having decent football teams like Memphis and Cincinnati making the playoffs, and UCF emerging, why would they give this pack any power status, especially now with more money being made with the 12-team playoff?
Well, because a 12-team playoff is a huge thing for college football. However, having a significant presence on the West Coast and big TV markets in LA and San Francisco and Seattle is hugely important, too, from a network perspective. So that's why it's critical that you get the right teams to come into the rebuilt Pac-12. Don't let this become Mountain West 2.0. Nobody wants to see that, and that's not going to have any input. But it's also absurd to think that Memphis and Tulane belong in a West Coast conference, don't you think? Here's my proposal. Pac-12. Go to the Big 12 and say, tell you what, I'll make a trade. I'll let you take the geographic one. You take Memphis, you take Tulane. Just put them in your conference. You give me BYU. Let me take Air Force. And then so we have a Western Conference with recognizable names and following. And then the Big 12 can be the Big 12. Because to me, Tulane, West Coast, what's the hook there? That's as bad as Cal and Stanford going to the ACC. No?
Yeah, the Tulane one is just nonsense. But that's funny. I mean, thinking about conferences trading universities, I don't think it ever happened, but it's a fun thing to think about. When you look at the 12-team playoff, by the way, is going to be great. I can't wait for this. And I've been hammering for this for so long. Like, in my opinion, they need to open up, make it 16, 32 teams. I think that would be great for the sport, but I'm loving 12 this year.
Yeah, it'll be good. The question is, we know the conference champions get in. Are the rest of the field of 12 all going to come from the Southeastern Conference? Is that good for college football if it becomes the Southeastern Conference tournament? I mean, if you're going to have a 13-0 Boise State team or whatever. Coastal Carolina was 13-0 and didn't even get an invite last year. And now, granted, they wouldn't have held up in a playoff game against one of the superpowers, but how are we going to fill out the rest of the field on a fair standpoint to everybody? Or don't you care?
Well, no, I want the top teams to be in there, and I want the guys that, like the little schools that are having great seasons to have them have a chance in this. Because I love March Madness, and you'll get Power 5 schools and mid-majors, and those games can be really entertaining. And then suddenly mid-major programs like a Gonzaga become a national powerhouse. We could see more of this in football if they just kind of allow them to compete.
So you won't be upset if Dartmouth in the Ivy League goes 11-0 and gets an invite?
I will not be upset because I'll say they deserve it, because we sure as hell know that in the championship game, was it last year or the year before? It was a can of whoop ass. Was it 63-7 or something like that?
Yeah, against TCU.
Yeah. So I mean, you get that in the championship game, then why not bring in some other teams at the lower levels? I think it's good for the sport.
Okay, we're going to argue about this going on and on and on and on further. Next topic.
Okay, let's go here. Dodgers, Padres. This is from Sharky. It says, Dodgers have been banged up, especially pitching, all year, so impossible to make a complete team. But the Padres have finally put a season together that should make the city proud. Baseball is weird. Anything can happen, but the Padres did good.
Oh, the Padres have grown so much. Early in the season, when I wrote a column about this looks like a house of cards, it's going to collapse, they were underachieving. I mean, it was the same thing we had last year. So, what was the argument? Look at the back of my baseball card.
Oh, yeah.
That's what Manny Machado told me. And I said, hey, a back of baseball card said you're the captain of a team that failed 2 years in a row. But at the end of the day, they got healthy. And, you just think of the acquisitions that A.J. Preller made. Where would they be had he not made the Dylan Cease trade? Where would they be had they not made the trade to get all the relievers at the deadline? Where would they be? Don't pull out the name Christian Bethancourt or some of these other guys. Where would they be had it not been with the arrival of Solano and the rental of Peralta? I mean, every move that he's made has had a direct impact either from a starting rotation standpoint, an everyday player standpoint, or an off-the-bench standpoint. And now they're really healthy. So to me, the Padres are the scariest team going to postseason play right now because anybody can beat you on that 25 or 20, it'll be 26-man roster.
It's going to be great. And my wife and I always joke that, we just want to be alive, to have the Padres win the World Series at least once before we die. So maybe this is the year. But, it's just going to be a fantastic postseason. Really looking forward to this.
53 sellouts right now. Just absolutely amazing how the community has just turned out. But they put a good product on the field. This is the end result.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Hey, listen, we hope you have enjoyed this extended Thursday edition of our podcast. We're here Mondays and Thursdays at 1 p.m. We want you to share, want you to subscribe, invite you to tell your friends who we are, what we're doing, and the fact that Hacksaw and his running mate from left field, John Riley, are here Mondays and Thursdays at 1 p.m. Also want you to check my website. I write on it every day of the week. Want you to follow me on Twitter, a.k.a. X, just at Hacksaw1090. Hit the follow button. Want you to subscribe. Every time we put something up on the YouTube channel, you will also get the alert. This podcast brought to you by DIXIELINE Lumber and Home Centers. You got projects, they have solutions. Build it, fix it. You will enjoy it for the rest of 2024 going forward at DIXIELINE. John, I can't wait for the great sports weekend. We got baseball, pennant races, and then we got college and NFL football.
Well, we got Thursday Night Football tonight. Aaron Rodgers again. Do you think New England can be competitive?
New England versus the Jets. Aaron's playing well, and this game is going to be down in New York, so that's home debut. He'll be excited.
Here we go.
Have yourself a great sports weekend.
Okay, looking forward to it.
And you have a great sports weekend. We'll see you come Monday at 1 p.m. Thanks for joining us on Hacksaw's Headlines.
Join us again for Hacksaw's Headlines on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. And find the audio version on your favorite podcast apps.
Touchdown, San Diego!
For more content, go to LeeHacksawHamilton.com.